Hello and welcome to the Small Business Briefing. This is a service of the Small Business Association of Michigan. I'm Brian Calley, the CEO of SBAM. I'm delighted to have you with us today.
Hi, everyone. Sarah Miller with Small Business Association of Michigan. We are welcoming a new strategic partner member today. I should have known how to say this, and I'm going to fess up, and Brian, I might need your help. Is it Baraga or Baraga County Chamber of Commerce?
Yeah, Baraga. Yeah.
Baraga. Okay. I saw that and I thought I should have practiced this ahead of time, and I need to memorize our counties a little bit better. So welcome new Executive Director Diane Kaskinen and all of their businesses. And of course, we are welcoming them on behalf of our sponsor, SBAM Energy Solutions. And now, speaking of SBAM Energy Solutions, we actually have a special guest on today's show. Jeremy Capello and I have worked together for several years now. Jeremy is with DTE Energy, and he is in their small business energy efficiency team. And Jeremy, thanks for joining us today. We're here today to talk a little bit about your Business Pride Contest. So can you share with everyone what the Business Pride Contest is and how people can take advantage of it?
Absolutely. Good afternoon, guys, and thanks for having me on, Sarah. Always good to be connecting with members, and we are very appreciative of the partnership we have with the Energy Solutions team over there at SBAM. And just a reminder for the members, please take advantage of that service. It's something that we are very proud of, and we work really closely with Sarah and her team to make sure that all of the members can get the best value out of the program. And Sarah and her team are very well aware of our rebates and kind of things going until the end of the year. So it's kind of my little plug for the small business program. But what I'm here to talk to you guys about today is our Business Pride Contest. And we've been running this for about 5 years now. And this is a really unique opportunity for customers to essentially tell us why they're proud of their business and what they would do if they were awarded some incentives for energy efficiency projects. So it's pretty cool. It gives customers an opportunity to share a little bit about their business, whether that's something personal or specific to a community. And DTE awards 3 grand prizes. So we have first place prize, that's $5,000. Second place prize of $3,000, and then a third place prize of $2,000. And again, those are direct funds that you can apply towards any type of energy efficiency project. So maybe you wanted some new lighting, or you had an out-of-date HVAC system that you've been thinking about upgrading. The contest is a really, really good opportunity just to kind of tell us maybe a little bit about yourself and how you could use that funding to help achieve better energy efficiency. So we would absolutely love to hear from all of the SBAM members, and everything is online right now. So you can actually go to dteenergy.com/businesspride, and everything is in there. It's a Microsoft form, and you kind of just go through and punch in your name and answer a couple of questions. And then the drawing kind of comes over to DTE. We are doing the awards. The contest closes November 3rd. So you got just about 3 weeks left. And then we would notify the winners probably right around the Thanksgiving time.
And Jeremy, can you share just a little bit about some of the previous winners? I don't mean to put you on the spot, but there's some pretty cool stories in there. I know we've talked about them in the past.
Yeah, absolutely. Excuse me. So we've had our grand prize winner last year was Victory Gym. So I'm located in Allen Park, Michigan, probably what would be considered downriver to most people. And the winner was actually from Brownstown. And what's really cool and unique about this gym is they specifically serve veterans. So what they do is it is a gym, right? Don't get me wrong, you can go in there and get your workout on and stuff like that, but it is more about the community aspect of it and providing resources for our veterans who are getting acclimated to coming back to I'll call it some sort of normal life or life outside of the military. And so they were awarded the $5,000 grand prize, and they upgraded their whole lighting system throughout the gym, which was a really, really big benefit to the members. And then if I'm thinking back 2 years ago, I think one of the grand prize winners was Weber Dairy Farm. Again, just something completely different from the winner of the previous year. But again, this was a family-owned dairy farm who, agriculture customers are pretty unique in the way that they use our product, right? And different things that they can produce. And so in this case, they had some unique upgrades that they were looking to do with specific equipment to help them be more efficient with their farming operations, and they were awarded one of the winners too. So really cool, kind of unique businesses. But at the end of the day, I think the important thing for us is just engaging with our customers and again allowing them to use this award how they see fit to make energy improvements.
Absolutely. Thank you. I think it's a really cool contest. I love that DTE spotlights the different kinds of small businesses that make up your customer base. And like you said in the beginning, we are also here to serve. So you can visit sbam.org/energy and request your own energy assessment. And of course, please go and apply for the Business Pride contest. And maybe we'll be talking about your successful energy efficiency project early next year. So thanks, Jeremy. We look forward to working with you in the future.
Yeah, thanks again for having me, guys. Appreciate the opportunity to kind of share again the website, dteenergy.com/businesspride. And we actually have 3 featured videos on there from our winners last year, which again can just give you a little bit more of a flavor for the types of customers and things that we've done with it. And I look forward to working with everybody on the SBAM team and hope to engage with some members in the future.
All right, thanks again. All right, so Brian, we have a number of reports to discuss today. Let's start with the latest jobs report.
Yeah, I'm kind of playing the part of an economist today. Got a tie on and everything. It's been a little while. I was at a meeting at the Federal Reserve on Friday in Chicago, and I walked into the room, and there were probably 25 people in this meeting, and I was the only one not wearing a suit. And I thought, are we still doing this? So I don't know, this morning I thought, you know what, I'm gonna wear a suit and tie today. I wish I was doing it on Friday.
New suit every day, but also suits on Fridays. I thought Fridays were a little more casual.
Yeah, no,
yeah,
I was definitely surprised. Well, anyway, yeah, we do have a jobs report, and that came out last week. And even though there was the jobs report kind of absent some other information, would have, I think, generally been viewed pretty positively. There was a pretty big, the investor confidence really dropped off last week, and it had something to do with the jobs report as well. So it came in at 263,000 jobs up, which this actually was pretty close on target with what was expected or what was projected, and that was a bit slower than the previous month of 315,000 jobs. So the idea that the Federal Reserve and those that are making monetary policy are looking to slow down or cool off the economy to rein in inflation without making it dip too far negative, and it's a pretty delicate balance. But this type of jobs report would normally kind of fit in that type of criteria where you'd see it slow but not drop off, and so I would say generally there was that it was looked at as positive in that segment of the report. We also saw the unemployment rate drop down from 3.7 nationally. Here we're talking about the Michigan numbers. So the Michigan numbers later on will be available, but nationally, the unemployment rate dropped from 3.7 to 3.5%, but that had to do with that was for generally negative reasons, which is the slight contraction in the workforce, which I do not think was anticipated when those numbers were released on Friday. Oh, you're
sorry, I went to start talking and I realized I was still on mute. Great. So let's talk now about the labor force participation numbers.
Yeah, this was the thing. This was the damper on the whole thing, was that while the jobs report showed it cooling off a little bit, but not dropping off sharply, the labor force participation rate actually declined slightly, and this was not something that I think was anticipated, and something that really I think caused some level of frustration. In other words, the number of people, or the proportion of people that are in the labor force, has just a little bit, but dropped off a little bit, when I think there was hope that would continue to rise. So the labor force participation rate was in the previous month was 62 or 62.4, and it dropped down to 62.3, and that again, it's not that it was such a sharp drop off, it's that it's already too low, and there was some hope that it would be trending upward, and that definitely was not the case. But there was another piece of information inside that which made it even worse. So you got labor force participation rate. Usually when I talk about it, I'm talking about for the entire population. But there's a group that economists look at as kind of that special group they call prime working age, and that's to 25 through age 25 through age 54. And that group, it dropped from 82.8 to 82.7. Again, slight drop off, but the fact that the drop off happened with the group that is the most productive and kind of the prime of the workforce is what I think really took what otherwise would have been viewed as a pretty positive or run-of-the-mill, no surprises report, and turned it into a pretty negative day, at least for investors on Wall Street. If you haven't looked at it, don't look at your 401k right now.
I try not to. So another piece of this puzzle is wage growth. What are we learning there?
So on wages, if we're to zero in like on the average hourly earnings, there was an increase of almost 5% year over year, so 4.98%, and that's actually the slowest wage growth since December of 2021, and in terms of looking at it year over year, so comparing this past month to a year ago this past month. And so as that's been increasing, inflation has also been increasing, and this month marks the 18th consecutive month where inflation exceeded wage growth, and or this month I should say, because it will again this month when those numbers come out, but the 18th straight month. And I think there's kind of a cumulative effect that's building right now with respect to the difficulty in the economy just kind of operating efficiently. So ideally, you'd see the job growth slow down. You'd see the labor force participation. While that was happening, you'd see the labor force participation at least hold steady, but at least people that were looking for work to find their way back into the workforce, the overall labor force participation to hold steady or inch up. And you'd want to see, of course, inflation be below wage growth. And just, each month there's things to look at. That's like, yep, that's part of it's pretty good, but then there's problematic parts of it too. This post-pandemic recovery period has featured so many crosswinds. It's created so much uncertainty, but unfortunately, it does seem like there's negative sentiment that's building out there, and you could definitely feel it throughout the last couple of weeks.
I'm talking about inflation. There's a report dropping later this week. What's that report, and what can we expect to learn?
So what we will see yet this week, what last month, the official numbers are on inflation last month. And while I don't have inside information on what the CPI numbers are going to show, the consumer price index numbers are going to show, the expectations are that that it's going to show stubbornly high. And so there's all this work that has happened to try to get it to come back down. Remember that 2% is the target rate that the Federal Reserve has, and it's been up over 8% since the summer. And so, each month it seemed like, every time it seems like it's kind of maybe crested and maybe we're going to start to see it come down, it stayed stubbornly high. And the reason that I think there's a lot of skepticism building is that core inflation has been staying high, and then commodities were coming down. So there's the idea that maybe with commodities coming down, we'd finally see some easing in the overall headline inflation. But now you have crude prices and gasoline prices and futures for crude that are rising. And so that's going to work against all this effort to bring down overall prices when the cost of energy is expected to continue rising. And unfortunately, the issues that are happening there with respect to that rise include OPEC, so a group of nations that work together to fix the price in oil, that are working together, as they conspiring to keep prices higher in the future. And so that's already impacting things. And then stepped up fighting, sometimes we might forget as we go about our lives here that there's a war happening between Russia and Ukraine. And and over the weekend, there was a pretty big escalation of that. And there are oil implications for that as well, in terms of the accessibility and, with Russia being a pretty big producer overall. And even though the U.S. isn't buying directly from Russia, it's a commodity. And when there's a restriction in one area of the market, it affects the entire market. So there aren't too many people who believe we're going to get a good inflation report this month, because all this work that has been done to try to bring it down might be wiped out by rising energy costs again.
So when you take into consideration all these factors, what are some of the ramifications policy-wise?
Well, I expect that we are going to continue to see pretty aggressive action in monetary policy, and that it's not close to being done. So the Federal Reserve will increase at increments, the interest rates at increments higher in the future, maybe up 75 basis points or a full point, or full percentage, the 2 or 3 more times. If inflation stays where it's at, then they'll get more aggressive in terms of trying to get those numbers down. But the more aggressive they get, the higher the recessionary risk is. And you might say, hey, I thought, negative GDP, we're already in a recession. We're really talking about here, I think there's a growing consensus that there will be a consensus recession in the future. The hope is that it is mild and short. Although there's disagreement out there among economists whether or not we're already there or if we're headed toward it, but there's kind of growing sentiment that is becoming more likely. And the fact that that inflation has remained so stubbornly high, even in the face of aggressive action by the Federal Reserve, additional aggressive action will increase the risk of recession. And so now it's kind of like a pick your poison type of a scenario. And I think that's why you're seeing such negative investor sentiment out there, is that at this particular time, it seems like the inflation is so deep rooted, so stubbornly high, that the risk of that is higher than the risk of recession, but that aggressive action to get the interest rates go down, 3 more big increases in interest rates, it I think has a significant impact on the expectations that we could be heading for a recession that is more, I'll say, more noticeable to more people. There's still a tight jobs market, and I think that's the one factor that is really kind of setting this time apart from other periods of economic contraction in terms of GDP, is that we've got labor force shortages, so it's not resulting in an unemployment. But you can only have inflation higher than wage growth for so long. You can only have inflation at this rate for so long before you see, and then interest rates going so high before it does take root, and it'll bring down inflation, but likely cause some economic turmoil in the meantime.
All right, so it's Monday, and I know we've covered a lot of economic related topics, but it's also now time for Data Monday.
Yeah, so let's just take a look at some of the slides here. The first is just the Gallup survey, which just shows how, now these aren't business owners, just the general public and how they're feeling. And what I found kind of interesting here was that July, August, September, you'll see that the number of people saying that the economy is getting worse has actually gone down. But the number of people that still rate it as poor has stayed about the same. And so, in other words, there's been a slight shift in people saying, yeah, I think the economy is getting better, and fewer saying that it's getting worse. But still, the proportion of those who say it's good, fair, or poor has stayed the same. Now on this next slide, we're looking at the job openings rate. And what stuck out to me on this one is the white line there in terms of the leisure industry. And this is, a pretty big, arc, and it's come down. So this is an area where there was a lot of demand, and that demand is coming down. Still, from a historic standpoint, high, but a trend line that's pretty sharply down. The others, industries, but durable good industries and non-durable good industries, those are both down as well. You'll see in the orange and the blue lines there, but pretty sharp decline there in the leisure industry. And then looking at the overall U.S. job openings, you'll notice that that's definitely rolled over. It's starting to come down. So this is like that previous slide, but all put together. And then you see the percentage in wage, in hourly earnings, wage growth for all employees, that it's kind of leveled out. So still, again, at a historically high level, but leveled out. And then looking at interest rates. Now this slide here, this is comparing the rates, the delta or the change from the previous year. So this isn't saying that rates are almost 4%. This is saying that they're almost 4% higher than they were a year ago. And that feeds into this next slide, which shows you in the job openings or in the financial services industry. Look at this drop off. I mean, it was something that was up and really dropped off at a level that we really haven't seen since the 2007-2008 recession. So the financial services job openings definitely going down, and obviously has a lot to do with it, where the interest rates are. This is taking a look at that, just added on the jobs report. As you can see, from a quarterly standpoint, looks, it's still healthy job growth. As I said, normally last week's job report would have been looked at as favorably or positive, but because it's cooled off some, but still strong. It was the workforce shortages that really spooked investors last week. or the labor force participation rate going down. But if you look at the new job openings from Indeed, so this isn't the entire economy, of course, but Indeed actually releases information, which is just very interesting to look at. You'll see that the new job postings as a percentage change from immediately before the pandemic. You'll see downward trend, but again, still strong, still high. This is the labor force participation rate. This is really kind of a fascinating trend to watch over time. So in the purple, you'll see the labor force participation rate among women, and then the entire population is in blue, and then among men is orange. So it's not the men labor force participation rate for men is always higher than women, as long as these stats have been kept. But what we see here is that the overall decline. Remember, I said it went down a little bit. So the overall decline actually was with women. And in that same time period, the labor force participation rate with men went up, yet still lower than pre-pandemic time periods. And so you definitely, the labor force participation of women has not recovered from pre-pandemic times yet. And that's why seeing it go down is especially problematic. And then this is what, remember I was talking about that, what is considered to be the prime working ages by economists. It's not my definition, so don't get mad at me if you're not between 25 and 54, but economists say this is the prime working age. And to see this come down was a real kind of punch in the gut as well. So as you can see, there's just a little bit of, it was onward, it was upward, and then came down. When I look at where's our greatest opportunity, it's really with this cohort to get it back to this pre-pandemic time period, where it was up over 83% to start. But look at that trend line set for the last several years. It was really on a tear, and significantly down, and just hasn't quite recovered. So any decline in this is going to be very discouraging for those that are watching the economy. And then this one I also found to be pretty interesting as well, is the percentage of those who are unemployed that left their job voluntarily. So people who have quit their jobs and entered the workforce but are unemployed. So in other words, quit without a plan B, almost 16%. That's pretty darn high. It's been a really long time. You have to go back to the late 80s before you can see that. So obviously employees still have a lot of confidence in the job market if you have that high of a percentage that are leaving without having employment. And then one last slide here I wanted to show. It's not really connected to the rest of them, but something that might contribute to people re-entering the workforce. And this is that the consumer credit outstanding revolving credits, in other words, credit card debt, is mainly what this is talking about. Outstanding, you'll see during the pandemic that plummeted. So people were paying off their revolving credit. And then not only is it back up, but look at this, it's actually higher, just slightly, than the pre-pandemic periods. So, during the pandemic, a lot of people got out of debt or significantly lowered their revolving or credit card debt. And unfortunately, it's right back up to what it was before. But from a workforce participation rate, there's only so much that people can put on credit cards before they got to get back at it. And it's one of those things where you kind of feel like the credit extension part of the labor force participation rate being so low, we might be at the tail end of that, because you had two things happening at the same time. Savings rates are returning back to normal, so they're going down. Revolving credit is returning back to normal, which means it's going up. So it wouldn't surprise me if that, on the margins at least, pushed a few more people back into the workforce that maybe have avoided getting back into it.
All right, we have one last quick topic for today. So a few weeks ago, we talked about a new initiative here at SBAM called SBAM Advocacy Champions. And today we had our first session. You want to share a little bit about what happened?
Yeah, so basically the background of this is that we love those of us who advocate for you into the state and federal governments, love to do so alongside of business owners that can tell their story first person, establish those relationships, be the experts on these issues and important issues that are being decided in the political process and the policy making process. But we know it can be intimidating. So we started SBAM Advocacy Champions. It's just kind of getting people trained up. And we had our first session today, and it was a virtual session, kind of level setting and terms and where the information comes and how it all works. Now we're doing a repeat of that session tomorrow. So we'll drop the link where you can get signed up if you thought, I wish I would have signed up for that before. It's not too late. So we'll do some virtual sessions where it's content heavy, but then we're literally going to go, we're going to have days where people are here in the capital city and visiting in committee sessions and participating, doing mock committee hearings, that kind of stuff, like that, how you'd really engage, get some practice so you can gain some confidence and work alongside us in creating an environment for small business success in Michigan. It's called the SBAM Advocacy Champions, and we'll never have enough. The more the merrier.
Absolutely. Hope to see some new faces during tomorrow's session. All right, thanks everyone for joining us today. We'll be back here Thursday at 3 p.m. Have a wonderful week.
Thank you. See you on Thursday.